So, talk us through the process then. Obviously, you've got a blank bit of paper. What comes next?
Terror. You kind of think, oh God, how am I going to do this? Yeah. Seriously, I know that sounds really odd. Even if it's just remote, you kind of think, what am I going to do? But sometimes there's things in the text that you can pick out.
Yeah.
So, here's something that I've done for a game called Vastberg, which is a French game set in a city where there's been a terrible magical explosion in the middle of the city. Okay. The centre is ruined and people are picking up the pieces. So how do I start? I read the text I'm given carefully so I don't miss anything. And then this was a simple description. It said, we want a picture of a bourgeois family, like middle class, and they've all taken to building villas out in the river on piles driven into the mud, so that they're away from the damage to the city. They can live into the style to which they've become accustomed, and they're very kind of snobby and a bit unpleasant, and what's left of the nobility think that they're, you know, they're a bit lower class really. And it said the buildings are on piles, the water has got quite a few like stork type birds, wading birds in it, and we would like these people shown in a boat. Yeah. So what I came up with was a family being poled along in this obviously sort of shallow water by a struggling serving man here. Yeah. They've got a flag with their symbol of their business on it, which is a horseshoe. I thought they're making ironware, and they're overdressed, and they've got a hideous little boy in the bows with a fishing rod that he's gonna, this hook is gonna fly off and it's gonna pull somebody's hat into the water or stick into somebody's ear. Yeah. So what I did was, I started off, in this case, drawing the boat. So I start off with a pencil drawing, and I drew the boat, really, got the form of the boat here, and I gradually loaded it with these people. So I drew maybe each person about 2 or 3 times, and then traced them onto this. And I put the flag in, and I built these buildings afterwards round to form a background, because the buildings are not necessarily, in this case, the subject, but they set the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I then take this pencil drawing and I put it on a light box, which is a box with a transparent top with fluorescent tubes in, and I trace it through onto a sheet of drawing paper. And as I'm tracing it, I correct little imperfections in the drawing, or maybe add details. So it's 99% what I've done first of all, with an extra percent put in. So then I start to fill it in with my felt tip pen. Wow. And you have to try and get a balance between the shades,
the light,
and you have to shade all the details in. Yeah. And that might take me about 3-4 days.
So presumably, because you've been illustrating now for what, 40 odd years?
Longer than I care to imagine.
You must have such a memory of how to draw things from memory. You know, you don't, or do you still use reference?
I use lots of reference.
Still use reference, right, yeah.
Because when I'm looking for ideas, sometimes I'll look at a real thing, but I don't see a finished picture in my head that I then draw. So I have a feeling I want to get these guys' snobbishness across. And I want to, like in this case, I'm drawing an underground market that's full of thieves, vagabonds, loose women, second-hand clothing, whelk stalls, etc., etc.
My kind of place.
So I start off thinking, well, it's got to look really sort of scummy looking, and people have got to look not quite honest and seedy. So I start looking at pictures of things like medieval feast days by Bosch and things like that. And gradually, I can't honestly say that I copy something.
No.
But what I do is, I might look at a figure and I think, I quite like that pose. So he might be standing like this. And I think, well, that's not quite right. So I think I'm going to move this arm down. Well, that means he looks unbalanced. So I then move another leg, and by the time he's drawn, he's a new figure.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes I might think, oh look, they're selling old clothes. So up there, in this portion of the picture here, we've got all the whole old clothes hanging on rods and bits of wire and things.
Yeah.
So that might come in, and gradually this comes together. This fat woman here, who is saying, "We have lovely ladies for you, sir." Yeah, she is actually based on a figure from a French music hall poster of about 1900, and I thought, a little fat woman with lots of jewellery, that would work quite well for this character.
So you draw obviously your inspiration from all sorts of sources.
And sometimes I draw the figures, not always, but individually. So in this one, which is a guy who's found a magical object in these ruins, this figure and this figure are drawn separately,
right,
cut out and then slid about. I've drawn the background. Yeah, I got the idea of this big column in the middle, and a sort of plunging view with columns in the background and an arch to show it's part of a building. And then I was sort of moving these backwards and forwards till I got a nice relationship that makes your eye sort of go like this as you look at it.
Yes, exactly. Okay,
So that's how I work.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if I for some reason have not been drawing for a while, like I've had a long weekend off, or I've, maybe I've been ill or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
I go back to work and I can't draw.
Really?
Yeah, I can't.
So you need to warm up then?
Yeah, I call it I say to my wife, well, I haven't drawn anything for like a week, I'm going to draw, we're going to start this project today, and I'm just going to draw shit all day. That's what I say, I'm going to draw shit. And it's all
painful.
It's painful. And sometimes I'll get to the stage where I just have a piece of paper and a pencil, and I just scribble like all over it until I might see some sort of recognisable shape in it.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'll twig, oh, that's it, I'll do that.
So I think that's very important, isn't it, to actually understand your own process, because there must have been certain times where you got really frustrated with that.
Well, I try not to understand it in a way, because I've got a fear that if I really fully understood it, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like people dancing, if they look at their feet, they start to trip over. So I don't really want to know quite how I do it. But I look at an awful lot of books. Things like, when I draw a horse, I'll have to look at lots of horses to get those legs right, things like that.
So what are you working on next then?
Well, I'm working on several things. I've just I've been approached by a company called Futsal Miniatures to reissue my first ever war game, which is called Cry Havoc.
Oh, fantastic.
So what I want to do is all the artwork anew. So I've done the artwork for the game boards. I don't know, those of you that have ever played it, know it's played on hexes with top-down views of buildings and trees and so on, that were, in the original, were drawn on a rectangular map and coloured in. What I've done now is I've drawn them on modules of hexes, and each feature is individual. So I've got individual houses, individual groups of trees, bits of slope. These will then be scanned, put together on a computer, and we will reproduce all the original maps from the games in a slightly different colour, slightly different, more subtle style and colouring. But we're going to launch it as a Kickstarter. If it works well, we can then offer add-on maps ad infinitum by putting these things together. So if we've got 4 buildings from the original map, we can use those 4 buildings, we can turn them left to right, we can turn them upside down, and we can cover an entire playing board with a town. We can put all the trees together to make complete forests. We can put all the slopes together to make a valley. And we could go on forever.
That's brilliant.
I have now redrawn all the little tiny medieval jokey figures that I did in the beginning.
That's brilliant.
I've kept the same coats of arms for the knights, although they're all in different positions. For the peasants, including one who's showing the finger, giving the finger to another peasant. I've redrawn several of them in the same position, but they've been totally redrawn, and I'm going to colour them up differently. And all the men at arms and things have all been redrawn, but I have drawn them as black outlines, and I'm going to print them. I've got a laser printer. I'm going to laser print them and then colour them individually, so that again, if people like this and they want more spearmen, more archers, or more hideous peasants, I can make up a sheet of new ones where you can buy a block of 20 spearmen or something.
Who wouldn't want a block of peasants?
Who wouldn't want a block of peasants?
Especially if they're...
Or a blockhead. That could be the collective noun for a group of peasants, a blockhead of peasants.
Fantastic.
So I've done all the boards, I'm now done all the black and whites of the playing pieces.
Yeah.
I've got to colour those in. They're editing the rules, so that will be completed, I don't know quite when, and we'll do a really nice new version of the rule book.
Cool.
And there has been talk of doing a bilingual English-French rule book, because it was such a big thing in France. Because I live in France now, and I've encountered so many gamers whose first brush with gaming was Cry Havoc. That's
fantastic.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. And so, you're doing any more book illustrations?
Am I doing any more book illustrations? Not at this moment.
You're going to retire?
No, God no. What I've started doing is, I've got a site now where I'm selling limited edition prints, so far largely pieces of old artwork.
Yeah.
I've got this guy, again, he's up there, you can buy a limited edition print. I'm only going to print 200.
Wow.
Okay, and they're all signed and numbered. When I reach 200, I will destroy that file on the site. I will never sell another one.
Oh.
And I'm doing smaller black and white ones. I'm doing a large A3 black and white, which is these guys here, which I did for the French role-playing version of Lone Wolf, which was called Loup Solitaire, and that's available too. And there's some random fantasy ones and some cuddly animal ones that I picked out to give a bit of a spread. But I've only got about half a dozen up there. I am going to put more up, hopefully in the next week or two.
And so that's your personal website, is it?
That's my personal website. It's www.garychalkfantasyprints.bigcartel.com.
There we go.
Don't miss it.
Yes.
Okay? We package these up, send them out. I write a nice little note for everybody, so it's like getting, not exactly a Christmas present, but it's a bit personalised.
It's personalised, yeah, absolutely.
And I've been talking on Twitter, amongst other things, about Old Hammer prints. Not exactly Old Hammer. I did a lot of work for the Warhammer books. No, when I was working for Games Workshop. And I did, for my own amusement, God knows why, because I'm working flat out, I thought, I wonder if I did one now, what it would look like. So I did this.
Wow.
With these dwarves. And I put this up on Twitter, and I said, what do you Old Hammer fans think of this? Would you like to see prints like this? And I've got quite a real, sort of affirmative response.
Absolutely.
So I thought, well, when I did this, I just drew 3 random dwarves with a nice flag, and I put the heraldry and all around, and I thought, it's a bit static. So what I'm doing, I've actually redrawn all these dwarves as though they're advancing into an arrow storm. There's more of them. There's one blowing a trumpet. And because times have changed, we have a lot more women gamers now.
Yeah.
And I feel that they should have characters that resemble them.
Absolutely.
Because they've been, frankly, ignored.
Yeah.
So I have put in a female dwarf, Arquith Basia, with a stunning fur hat and rolled up sleeves, who looks as though she really means business. And
don't get in her way.
No. So they're slightly smaller, they occupy the bottom. I am going to put the shields again round them with all this lovely heraldry. But I'm putting a title across saying dwarves in chunky, kind of retro lettering, and underneath of ironstone crag. So it's not an attempt to be Old Hammer or Warhammer, but it's in the spirit of those things.
Well, but people that love the old Hammer, they're going to love that.
So if I get a good response to that,
absolutely,
it'll be done in stunning Technicolor, just like this. If I get a good response to that, I'm thinking I could go through all the fantasy races like orcs, goblins. One thing I've actually drawn as a rough is, you know, we've got the plague of scooters now all over the streets. I've actually got a goblin riding a kind of like 40k looking scooter, and I'm thinking of doing a picture of these goblin suicide kits, like Baby We Were Born to Run. So that's something I've done a rough of, but I will do things like, and maybe some things like samurai orcs, I think, and goblins. That could be quite fun with like Japanese armour and weapons and things like that. Or there's never been anything done like these are dark elves. They never ever got featured like this, so I might do some dark elf stuff.
Go for it.
I've thought some elves as well, like fighting in a wood covered with bluebells. So that's the kind of image I got in my head. So I might go back and do things I never got the opportunity to do before. And the prints are quite reasonably priced. And as I said, they're collectible now. These are what they call Giclée prints. I got my own printer with
that's good quality. That is.
With like it's got a bank of 10 cartridges in. I use paper that's got no acid in it, so that it doesn't decay, it doesn't go yellow. It'll probably last longer than I do, which is a bit worrying.
Not by the sounds of it.
So
I don't know if we're allowed to mention this, but we have mentioned it today. This is going out after today, so presumably we are. But you're back doing.
I am going to illustrate the last Lone Wolf book. Dun dun dun.
That was the big news.
Which has been that's a very strange idea. And today I've been sitting next to Ben Deaver, who is Joe's son, and I'm sitting there signing books with him, just like I used to do with Joe, which is a very strange feeling, which has been made even stronger by the fact that he sounds like his father.
Oh, wow.
He has the same voice, and it's quite a strange feeling.
I can imagine so.
So, you know, but I'm also going to have words with him about, I've got other ideas for other projects, so I'll see.
So it's gone full circle. I think that's beautiful, isn't it?
It is a strange, I've had a very strange life. I mean, I've lived in New Zealand for a couple of years. I've got 3 wonderful but very, very diverse children all over the world. I've got a wonderful wife who is Chinese by birth. So we're a kind of international family. I have now become, thanks to Brexit, God damn it, I have become a French citizen. So
well, maybe that's a good thing.
Well, I like it, but I don't have the impression that it's ever been boring.
No, and unfortunately, I think we've run out of time because obviously you have got. It sounds like you've lived a very, very full life.
No, I've not shown you my secret erotic tattoos yet.
Exactly.
So watch out for another interview.
They can get prints on that.
Yeah. But they'll be sent in brown envelopes, don't worry.
Thank you. That's what we love. Thank you so much, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
But it's been really nice chatting to you.